to the Morning Drive. I'm your host, Brooks Fiesinger of BrooksFiesinger.com and MillionaireWho.com, where we help you stabilize your wallet, secure your future, and succeed in entrepreneurship and finance. Again, I'm here with my co-host, a 2015 Hyundai Sonata. I've already learned a lot from my first video podcast, and this time I have decided to actually put the camera in the same orientation that somebody would actually watch it in. That's one of those silly things that you feel like is a minor undertaking, and how do you miss something like that? It's pretty obvious. Nobody watches portrait mode. It's kind of funny when you think about everything else that's going on. Somehow you manage to forget even those little things. This is episode 2, and so now I've got some of those little bugs fixed up. So hopefully your viewership experience is quite improved from the last time. Some of the other things that I figured out didn't work too well last time is besides the video quality situation and the orientation, is the audio quality could be improved. Hopefully this is a little better. And this is kind of silly because I'm a tech guy, right? But on my camera, there's two modes. It's HD and FHD. Somehow I have it in my head that HD is full resolution and FHD must stand for something even less. I was totally off base there. FHD is the higher resolution, and HD is the lower resolution. HD is only 720p. FHD is 1080p. So once again, got that piece fixed as well. If you've got any other feedback for me, certainly let me hear it. So what's on the docket today? Today we've got a few things we're going to talk about. We're going to bring back up the 10x rule from last week. We're going to talk about the 4 P's of marketing for a few moments. We're going to talk about the truth down on a 0% down purchase, and discuss a little note that I received yesterday. I want to talk about the 10x rule again. Once again, I told you guys last week, it's a book by Grant Cardone, and I always make sure I'm reading all week as I'm driving to work. I listen to audiobooks. I try to read at night as well before bed. I always thought it was very important to maintain continuing education. And the 10x rule, I didn't necessarily say it was the best book in the world, but I had advised that if you're looking for something to read, it's not a bad book. There's just not a lot that's new, but I do like that he does point out early on something that very few others do, which is that it's not easy. Way too often we believe that success should be easy, but there's nothing easy about it. Don't let anything I say ever make you believe that realizing these dreams and being ultra successful will ever be easy. And on the other hand, frankly, I would say that it's just simply hard. It takes so much work. I've posted a few times on social media things like, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. Where's your hustle? And the idea is I'm up at 4 o'clock in the morning working on things, and guess what? The next morning at 8 a.m. I'm expected to be at work. You can't necessarily do that every day, but it's realistic for me to be up 2 o'clock, 4 o'clock several times a week while I'm working on some of these projects. And it's just not me. If you look around at people much more successful than I, they are too doing a similar thing where they are up very late putting in those hours, especially if you're trying to build a project or work on something in addition to your primary job or employment. Most of us have to work their primary jobs from 9 to 5 or 8 to 6, sometimes even more. We've got glowing careers rolling. For example, I typically put in about 50 hours a week at my primary job, sometimes more. If I'm putting 60 hours in a week, where does that extra 40 hours come from to work on these other projects? The only place these 40 hours are going to come from is, from that late hours hard work and early morning hard work. There's no other way to go about it. You can't work on your side gig while you're doing your primary gig. I always have a hard time with the side gig versus primary gig thing, simply because I do like my quote-unquote primary job, but I make less money off my primary job than I do my side gigs. But you'll get there sometime as well if you're not already there. But one of the things they talk about in the 10X rule, besides simply working hard, is also about success being an obligation. And this is not a topic that is necessarily original to the 10X rule, right? There's a whole lot of books that talk about how success is an obligation. The reason I find this incredibly pertinent, however, is that I wouldn't say most people I know feel like success is an obligation. And in fact, it's true. I hear people say silly things all the time, like, it's all about the journey, not about the destination. Have you heard that? I can't tell you how often I've heard that. I see quotes about that on Facebook. I see quotes about that. And you know who gives you those quotes? Those quotes always go from somebody who's, not there in life, right? You sit there and say, will that person ever grow up? Oh, it's about this journey, not the success. If that works for you, great. But I'd venture to guess when you're 55 years old and sitting on $0 saved up for retirement, that you're not going to be singing the same tune. Frankly, you're probably going to be looking at people who have been busting their rear end over the last couple of years or 30 years and saying, oh, how did they get lucky? They don't deserve that. They didn't work that hard. And the fact of the matter is, buddy, you've been telling yourself for years that success doesn't matter. And a lot of other people do think success matters. So, you can't look back at those people who think success matters and all of a sudden decide that because they're successful, because that was their goal, and you didn't care about it younger in life, that, oh, they were lucky. There's no luck about it. I can't tell you, short of somebody winning the lottery, of somebody who has become incredibly successful or wealthy, I should say wealthy, because of luck. The kicker is, if you win the lottery and you get a whole bunch of money, that's not success. In fact, a lot of people who become lottery winners end up regretting it. And I've read some articles talking about actually regretting winning the lottery because their life gets worse. All this money, but they're not in a place in their life that they can handle that money. They can't work with it. They can't use it to better their life. There's a lot of good things that come from wealth. It makes some things in your life easier, but it's not an instant ticket. And even when you become extremely wealthy, you become your millionaire, you become a billionaire, that's not, your journey's not over. Your journey is often just beginning, and you now have more assets and you have more tools, but that just means you've got to accomplish more, right? And that's really what Grant Cardone's talking about. He talks about how success really is an obligation. It is not a choice. You shouldn't just sit there and say, hey, I want to be successful. You've got to look at success as an obligation to yourself, to your family, to your community, right? If you're not successful, or you're the exact opposite, right? If you're dependent on others, for example, then imagine that for a minute, right? You are actually a burden on others, right? Other people have to work harder to make up for you. That's not okay, right? I'm not saying you don't help people when they need help. I help people when they need help. You should help people when they need help. My point is that your goal should not to be a victim. Your goal should not to be to need help, right? Your goal should be to be successful yourself, to make your world a better place, to make your life a better place, to make your family's life a better place. That is your obligation. And you need to get up every day and sit there and say, look, it's my obligation to be successful. And because it's my obligation to be successful, I'm going to find out a way to do it. And then you get in line with the rest of the 10X rule, right? Which is, you think that it shouldn't be so hard, it shouldn't take so much work, but it does. And I can't tell you how often I've failed on projects because of my own failures to make sure I do what needs to be done. Sometimes I will, I have in my life not put in enough effort at times. And it has been completely my fault that projects have failed. Now, there's two topics here. There's throughput and bandwidth. And I know a lot of people who will put forth a whole bunch of time. They'll put forth 60 hours a week for like 2 weeks. And then they're like, hey, it's not been successful. Must be a failure. I should throw this project away and try something else. Do you know anybody who has a new project idea every 2 weeks? Literally, it's like, here's my next get-rich scheme. I'm going to spend 400 hours and get rich. And then what happens 2 weeks later? Like, oh, I tried so hard and it didn't work. And, this is a failure. I need to find something else. And then the next week is, hey, I found this new project. I'm going to get rich so quick. I guarantee you know somebody like that, right? You know somebody like that. I can't tell you how many people. I know a lot of people like that. Bet you do too. And that's really an issue of, that's great that you put in all that hard work, but you didn't put in long enough. Never heard of anybody that became successful overnight, unless they won the lottery. But even then, most people that win the lottery have played it for 40 years. It's an exaggeration. They played it for many years and failed for many, many years, and then someday they get lucky. But then if you're one of those people who sits there and says, hey, look, I'm going to be a millionaire in 3 weeks. I'm going to work really hard. Great, work really hard. But you've also got to work hard much longer. Years. Think years. Every project you take on, think years. Think 60 hours a week in 10 years. If you can approach a project with 60 hours a week in 10 years, you're probably going to be successful, unless it's a really awful idea. Even if it's an awful idea, you're probably going to be successful. And that's one of the things that drives me crazy in life, is how many awful ideas become incredibly lucrative and incredibly successful because the person behind them just wouldn't quit. They were relentless. If the project you're working on, you can't be relentless and you can't work on it 60 hours a week, you can't be a nut about it, right? If you can't devote yourself for years, if you can't do that, you're probably not going to be successful. Odds are you're not. So you better find that project that you can put yourself 60 hours a week into for 10 years. And I hope it doesn't take 10 years for you to actually start seeing some success, right? You should start seeing some success a lot sooner than that. But that doesn't mean you're going to be at your end goal. You're not going to be at the point where you truly feel successful with that project. Especially because the more you put into something, the more you expect out of it. And that's one of those things that's kind of humorous at times. You think, hey, I'm going to go spend all this time on something. I just spent 6 months of my life, and now all of a sudden I'm making $1,000 a month for this project. All right. Now, $1,000 a month doesn't sound awful until you realize that you just spent 6 months on the project without any return. And that's precisely why you need to actually expect more, or why you'll expect more. Because by then you're going to say, well, $1,000 would have been great the first week I started because, hey, it's just taking a week worth of effort. Now that I've got 6 months in here, I need more than 1,000. So then when you're working at it for another year, and then all of a sudden it's been a year and a half in, and you're getting $2,000 a month, you're going to sit there and say, all right, I like $2,000 a month. But I've been doing this for a year and a half. I expect more than $2,000 a month. So then you grow it another year, then you get to 3,000, another year, you get to 4,000, and now, when you get to $4,000 or $5,000 a month, you start thinking, hey, all right, this isn't too bad. I'm getting to the point now where I feel like I'm successful, and that's good. But that's kind of the point that I'm getting at here. You want to be successful. I want you to be successful. But your definition of success will continually change. The more successful you become, the more you expect out of yourself. I see this in my own life. Some people will call me successful. I'll call myself successful, but that's only because I continually improve and continually expect more out of myself. What I have today, I would have considered very successful 20 years ago. 10 years ago. This would have been a dream to me. The idea of having what I have now, doing what I do now, would have been a tremendous dream of mine just 10 years ago. But now it's not enough. Now I expect more. And you expect more, and you're going to expect more, because success is an obligation. And as an obligation, it means you need to do more. You need to do all that you can. That's what we're talking about here, right? Now, we talked about the people who put, 60 hours in and for 2 weeks, and then they say, hey, I should be done, and I'm not. There's another type of person. That's the person who puts in 1 hour a week for 10 years and says, hey, why am I not successful? I've been doing it for 10 years. I've seen people like this in, say, the social media sphere. They sit there and say, I've had my Facebook posts ball up. I've had my accounts up for 10 years. I've had my accounts up for 20 years. And guess what? I'm not seeing my billions of dollars yet. 10 years and no money. And I can go look at their social media account for a minute and say, okay, so how often are you active on here? How often are you engaging other people? Well, I post at least once a week. Once a week? And what's your post? Hey, I got a haircut today. Very few people care that you got a haircut. And they definitely don't care if you got a haircut if you're only posting once a week. So, that's, you got the longevity in there. You're doing it long enough. But you know what you're not doing? You're not doing enough of it. Right? It's plenty of throughput, but not enough bandwidth. It's a bandwidth versus throughput situation. You need throughput and you need bandwidth. If you're only working on it a few minutes a week, you might have total throughput, but you don't have the bandwidth. You're not doing enough at one time. If you're doing 60 hours for 1 week, 2 weeks, you've got enough effort, but you're not doing it for enough time. You need both. You need time and you need effort. All right, second topic I want to talk to you about today, the 4 P's of marketing. Some of you might be saying, hey, I didn't sign up for a lecture here. First of all, let me remind you, I am a college professor. But this is an important lesson, and I'll keep it fairly straightforward. Now, I hate when people say everyone. But oddly, this has been true in this case. Everyone who's ever come up to me and asked for help or advice in marketing is talking about one thing: promotion and advertising. And this disturbs me because from my experience, that's rarely the problem that somebody has when they're talking to me. There's this concept in marketing called the marketing mix. And the marketing mix is this idea that there's 4 P's to marketing, right? The 4 P's are price, promotion, product, and placement. Everybody seems obsessed with this concept of promotion, but guess what? When I teach a class on marketing, I spend like a week on promotion, and I spend the rest of the class on the other 3 P's. And that's because the other 3 P's, price, product, and placement, in my opinion, are way more important than promotion. And promotion's useless if those aren't already in place, right? If you don't have a good product, nobody cares about your promotion. If it's not where people can get it, placement, nobody cares about promotion. And if the price is not in line with anything anyone ever paid for, then it doesn't matter about your promotion. So the moral of the story is, when you're talking about marketing, I care very little about promotion. It's important, but not until you get the other 3 P's in line. One of the first P's I want to talk about is product. Product is going to be frustrating at times because I can't tell you how many people take a piece of junk product that they pull out of their back pocket that they put on a napkin and say, all right, I'm going to go spend millions of dollars making this big. And I have to ask the question, why don't you spend a little more time and money making sure that product actually is right before you try to promote it? I think if you have the right market, no question about it, if you know a market and you know what the market needs, you can provide what the market needs, you're going to see success. I'm confident in that. So I always want to know, is this product that you're pitching right now, is this product the right product? Is it? I can't answer that for you easily. You've got to answer that for yourself. But you need to do a little bit of research in that. talk to potential customers, do a little research on the competition. Is this product the right product? You might have to make some tweaks. You might have the right need but the wrong solution, and you need to change the solution. That's all fair game. That's okay. You do that. Spend a lot of time early on making sure your product's good. Now, I don't want you to get or let perfection get in the way of good enough. I think perfection is a sickness in the world of business. So many people fail simply because they're so obsessed with perfection and they're not just doing what they need to do. But just because you're not worried about perfection doesn't mean that you should just let whatever comes out of your back pocket from day one go into production. And whether that production is a video blog, whether that production is a social media account, whether that production is a new car, whatever that is, make sure it's what your customers need and what your customers want. Put some serious effort into the product. Then you've got this whole concept called placement. And placement is also an important one that few people talk about. Where are your customers looking for the product that you're talking about, right? Now you've got a product, your product's set. Where does it need to be? If your customers are going to the grocery store and that's where they have to buy it, then you got to get that product in the grocery store. It's that simple. That's simple, right? I know some people say everybody's moving online. Are they really moving online for your product? Are they? They could be. But you need to answer that question. And if they are going online is no longer a small little world where you can just stick something on there and people will notice. There are tons of well-built, expensive websites that have nobody visiting them. You don't want this to be you. So how do you get in front of people? Do you have to get on eBay? Do you have to get on a specific car forum or a certain website? Do you have to get on Amazon? Do you have to get in Walmart? Where do you have to be for your specific product? Where are people looking for them? You can say the same thing about search terms. If you're completely expecting people to type in the right search terms, you better put a lot of effort into making sure you have the right search terms for your product. That's what modern placement is about. It's can you get what people need to find it? Not necessarily just the right store, but the right place, the right search terms, the right location on the web. There's a lot of companies that have great products, and in fact, I kind of laugh about this. So I've had this little side business where I've done car parts, and I don't make a whole lot of money, so I keep thinking I should kill it, but I don't because it's easy and it's kind of fun. And pretty much what I do is I take these products from other industries, and I realize that realistically these would help people in the car industry as well. So I'll go take this thing, say for example a spring, and I'll go buy this spring for $8, okay? And then I know it solves some specific problem in the automotive industry. So I go put it on eBay, talking about it solving this problem for the automotive industry, and I charge $40-50 for it, okay? Now, somebody could come to me and say, hey, but they can buy that same spring for $8 at their local hardware store. And my response is, sure they can, but they won't. Because they don't go into a hardware store saying, where can I find a spring that'll solve this problem? No, they say, I have a problem, how do I solve it? Where's the solution to my problem? And that's what the important thing about both product and placement is. Product and placement is not about just where it is and what it's not about the physical bounds. It's not about any of that. It is about what do people need and how are you solving it? It's that simple. And if it means you're taking something that somebody else is selling and repackaging it, or sometimes you're not even repackaging it, you're just putting a different name on it, or a different label on it, or a different advertising spin on it, that's a new product, and that's a new promotion, and a new placement. So what I'm doing is I'm taking this product from a placement that doesn't work for the automotive industry, and I go stick it in front of people where they're looking for it. And guess what? I sell them. And not only do I sell them, I get positive feedback and positive response and people saying thank you so much because my solutions are cheaper than what a dealership's going to charge to have it fix that same problem. So if they're a happy customer and I was able to solve that problem, I consider that a win. You should too, right? Look for those opportunities where you can take an existing product, change its placement, and all of a sudden solve problems for people, make their lives better. If I wasn't here, these customers that are buying this stuff for the automotive industry, do you know what they'd have to do? They'd have to go to a dealership, which is nothing wrong with dealers. Dealers are great, right? They serve their purpose. They're going to go get a short-term fix that's 3 times as expensive, and I've got a permanent fix that's 1/3 the price, right? And that is what we're talking about here. That's what we're talking about when when somebody can actually solve a problem that saves money and saves time and makes everybody happy. Who cares how much money they make, right? You can gladly, if you want to sell me a car that makes me perfectly happy for $20,000, right? And I love it, and I'm super happy with it, and it only costs you $4,000, and therefore you make $16,000 on it. Great, I don't care. Make your money. Seriously, make your money. I don't care how much you make, because the fact of the matter is, I'm happy and I spent $20,000 on it. And just because somebody else can't sell a car for $20,000, they sell it for $30,000 and only make $5,000. I don't care how much money you make. You solve my problem cheaper than anyone else could. That's what's important, right? And that's what it comes down to. That's why we talk about marketing and the 4 Ps. I again repeat, the least important of the 4 Ps is promotion. That will come around. I don't want you to worry about that up front. All right, next topic I want to talk about is something that's, kind of personally dear to me. And I kind of chuckle about this because I've listened to podcasts and I've watched video podcasts and I've read books. And I always find this guy who's successful and talking about, oh, I bought some real estate property and I didn't have to pay a penny down. And I sit there and say, yeah, right. How does a normal person go buy a place for nothing? And I just kind of chalk this up as, either freak luck or a complete made up lie. Honestly, in some cases, I question the honesty. I don't question people's general honesty, but sometimes I question exaggerations or, if somebody's being completely truthful. And this is one of those stories that I've heard so many times by people. It's like everybody's got there. I bought this cool apartment complex and I didn't pay a penny. Well, I kind of got obsessed with this idea and I decided that I was going to do it. And I'm kind of excited because this week I penciled my first $0 or 0% down deal. And it's kind of funny because, I understand why they're rare, but that doesn't mean they're impossible. And that was what was kind of fun. So I was dealing with this business. It wasn't even just a property. I'm dealing with this business. And what was I able to do? I was able to do a combination of, some lender financing, which will pretty much do 80% LTV. And then I was able to couple that with some seller financing. Seller didn't want to finance the whole thing, which I understand, but I got enough to cover much of the property. And then I was able to get seller financing for most of the rest. And now all of a sudden I'm looking at a situation where I'm like, hey, we're actually going to close in this place with $0 down. And that's one of those things that I've heard before, but I didn't think it was actually ever going to happen. I didn't think it was realistic. And look at me, little old me, I made it happen. And that got me excited because, so frequently we look at these situations in life, or we sit there and say, you know what, yeah, somebody else could do that, but not me. Yeah, that happened to somebody else, but not me. And it's kind of funny because it's only been a year since I really got into people talking about doing this kind of stuff. And so literally, in just a year, I was able to look around a little bit, find a place, structure an offer, convince the people of taking the offer, right? Because you got to convince both the seller and you've got to convince the bank. I don't mean persuade unnecessarily, but you've got to convince a bank that you're a safe risk. You got to convince the sellers that you're a safe risk. And so realistically, no matter how you slice or dice it, you do have to convince the people that this is a good opportunity for them. And it is. I'm confident that the bank's going to get their money back, and I'm confident the seller's going to get their money. It's really a real win-win for everybody. Now, this business churns out positive cash flow every month. So literally, in the first month, I'm going to get money, and it's going to more than cover the costs of the loans, and it's literally going to pay for itself. As in, no joke, no exaggeration. I paid nothing down, and I'm going to have cash flow start to flow. Now, this took a lot of legwork, and that I don't want to deny. It might have been easier not to do it this way, but I kind of insist. I was like, we have to do it this way because I've always wanted to. But it reminds me, and should remind you, that it's possible. You can, in fact, create these amazing deals. As much as you feel like you can't, you can structure something that no one else thinks is possible, and you can, get that squared away. And it really just takes some legwork, some hard work, some pitching of yourself to people. I had to talk to a whole bunch of different banks to see who would do it with very little down, and then I had to work out the seller financing piece. But when it's all said and done, it happened, right? I've got it penciled, and so I just wanted to bring that up because that's one of those things that I didn't believe was possible until I did it, and so now I'm confident that you can do it. I still think, like I said last week, that you need money to do a lot of businesses. There are businesses you can do without money, but a lot of businesses do need money. And one of the reasons I was able to do 0% down was because I make enough income that the bank was confident I could cover it, that I have enough business history that the sellers were confident that we'd be able to make the payments. So there's a lot of things that were necessary to make this happen the way it did that some of you might not have at your disposal. But the real thing here is that you can be creative, right? And you can look for these opportunities to create things that people think is impossible, right? Zero down. And maybe you can't easily get a zero down, but you might be able to work out some other arrangement, some other creative setup for your business startup that other people think is impossible. And that's the cool thing about the world, right? Is there's typical ways that people try to do things, and that's fine. You can do typical things the way people do things, but you don't have to, right? There's other ways to get things done. So you just have to be creative. You have to convince people that your creative method is a good way. This isn't going to be bad for anyone involved, right? This is good for everybody. It's a win-win-win. They're going to close a deal they wouldn't have closed otherwise. They're going to get as much money as they want. The bank's going to make money off of us, and we're going to make money. Everybody's happy. Customers are going to actually get better service. Everybody's going to be best off in the situation, right? But I had to put in some legwork to make it happen. All right, last topic today. And this should be real quick, but I got an email from my friend Steven. And Steven asked me specifically, he said, I have a question I'm not sure if you know or not, but one of my two friends that joined my business so I could have an S-Corp, because you need 3 people, has basically fallen off the planet. It's impossible to contact. That worries me because I feel like it's going to put me in legal trouble since I'm required to hold business meetings with both at least once per year and need them both to sign certain documents. Is it possible to just remove him and replace him by force? I have no ability to contact him, so I don't know how to handle this. Well, Stephen, for many of our listeners, this question is going to be a little deeper than they're used to addressing. But that's okay, because a lot of you are going to realize that while right now you don't have a corporation, or actually some of you will, many of you will, you're going to realize that you actually do want to create a corporation, because you're either going to want to create a personal corporation or you're going to buy a business or create a business. And so the way that I would answer this is, first of all, Stephen, what are you doing asking a friend to just join? Just for a legal obligation, right? You've got a tremendous opportunity here where you have a business and you need partners for your business, and you can go get some amazing people to work with you. This doesn't sound like an amazing person. If they're not active, then why did you even ask them to be involved from the get-go, right? There's some fantastic benefits of corporations, but you don't want to force a corporation just because it's a corporation. You could have protected yourself similarly with an LLC, or if you were going to create a corporation and you needed 3 owners, I would go get your owners who are beneficial, right? You can build a board pretty easily. I've not had trouble finding people who wanted to be part of my businesses, even when I was a college student and not making any money. So you should be able to get some quality individuals as part of that business. Now, the more important piece of this, though, is you're in this situation. Now, what do you do? And my big question is, what does your operating agreement say? If you don't have an operating agreement, you're in bigger trouble, because that is one of the requirements, to my understanding. You might want to go talk to a lawyer. I want to remind everyone here, I am not a lawyer. I cannot give you legal advice. but I would talk to a lawyer about that. If you do have an operating agreement, then your operating agreement should spell out specifically what to do about an owner that's not meeting their obligation. I've owned a number of companies with owners, and every one of my operating agreements specifically states that I can get rid of an owner if they are not meeting their obligation to the company. However, if I was in a situation like you were, where I had just one or two small minor owners that were just in there because they needed to be part of it for some reason, and they're not active with the company, then in my mind they would only be partial owners, having a share or less, a couple of shares, a percentage or less, not a share or less, they'll have to have at least a share, but a percentage or less. And if they have a percentage or less of the company, then I would guess in your operating agreement, a majority could kick somebody out. So I own the majority shares in many of my companies. And if I own a majority of shares, then in all my operating agreements, I can unilaterally get rid of any owner that I need to, based on that, especially when you're talking about the situation that you're talking about here. So look at your operating agreement. That should help. Most of my best companies, though, honestly, I am not a majority share owner, right? I am a partial share owner with other excellent people, because amazing what happens when a bunch of excellent people get together. I'm going to end my slogan in a minute, but it's true. When you got a bunch of amazing people together, you can make amazing things happen. And so seriously, when you're starting a business, don't be afraid of working with some awesome people. Don't just sign people up because you need 3 people. Go sign people up who are going to be awesome and going to make your life better and make your business better and make amazing things happen. All right. Well, I appreciate you spending time with me today. I know this is valuable time, but hopefully you learned something. I really do. Thank you for joining me. And now go out there and make the impossible happen.